আমার হাত বান্ধিবি পা বান্ধিবি মন বান্ধিবি কেমনে আমার চোখ বান্ধিবি মুখ বান্ধিবি পরাণ বান্ধিবি কেমনে bar my arms and bar my legs, but how will you bar my heart? Bar my eyes and bar my mouth, but how will you bar my soul? Greetings and very good evening to everyone. I, Mayuraksha Day, I'm a student of Sociology Honours at St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. My pronouns are she and her. Today, I, along with my friends, are here to discuss about a very important topic, a topic that I believe requires concern from every corner of the society. Today's topic of discussion is it's never a binary, it's always a spectrum. We all know that around the world, the month of June is celebrated as a Pride Month. There's a very interesting story behind this celebration of a Pride Month. On June 28, 1969, at the Stonewall Inn in the New York City, there was a riot between the members of the LGBTQIA plus community with that of the police personnels. These people were protesting for their existential rights, wherein the police personnel of the authorities were trying to resist them from protesting and were court arresting them without any prior notification. These people, they struggled hard and kept their march on despite enormous discrimination and enormous hurdles by the police personnel. To mark this day and to mark the struggle of the LGBTQIA plus community, the month of June is celebrated as the Pride Month. We are here to celebrate Pride Month, but we are also here because we believe that this pride should be carried on not only in this month, this pride should be carried on around the world, all across the 12 months of the year. Before going to the core of today's discussion, I would like to talk a little bit about what is the difference between sex and gender, and why gender is considered as a spectrum. Now, sex is a biological construct. It is something that is present in the body and acts as a differentiator between a male child and a female child. It is a biological differentiator. For example, for a male child, the presence of genitals, and for the female child, the presence of vagina. Whereas gender is a sociological construct and it is a social differentiator. It is something that is present in the mind and not in the body. There are, therefore, multiples of gender identities. Though society tries to put constraint on those gender identities by overlapping it with the sexual identities, but in actuality, in reality, gender is a wavelength, it is a spectrum. Keeping this point in mind, today we are here to discuss about this wide spectrum of gender. Therefore, beginning with today's discussion, the first speaker for today is Anamitra Jaiswal from Delhi. Requesting Anamitra to please talk about this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayuraksha Day. A very good evening to one and all present here. Today, I, Anamitra Jaiswal, a student of Shiv Nada School, Noida, would like to speak about a topic that is very close to my heart. Rangama de Shokole, Pratik, Prakriti Kashi, Jalamade Ekochitra Kore. The diverse colors are the smiles of the nature that unites us all. It is these colors that help us identify beyond the binary of black and white. Because not everything around us can be in colors of black and white, but rather it is the colorful spectrum that unites us all. This month, we are celebrating the Pride Month because many people around us still feel encaged in the cage of society, in the cage of binary. The LGBTQI community, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual, are the colors of the spectrum that sparkle in our society. They are the many that help us identify diversity amongst all of us. But at the same time, they are the ones that experience a lot of trauma, depression, and undergo multiple shame within the society, thereby leading to not emerging out as homosexual and opening and not opening their own identity. People in the LGBTQI community are fighting for equal rights and acceptance. Transgender people face a lot of difficulty in finding acceptance in the society, in families all around them. The LGBTQ community are looked down upon all the time. This is the major issue because discrimination against LGBTQ community is highly prevalent in India. People's prejudices lead them to think that LGBTQI people are odd and different. Today, homosexuality and queer identities may be acceptable to more Indian youth than ever before, but within the boundaries of families, homes, and schools, acceptance still remains a constant struggle for our fellow mates. I have heard of people coming out of the closet and declaring to their families that they are not the person their family expected them to be. Being LGBTQI is not a problem, nor is it a choice as such. LGBT people are merely individuals who have sexual preferences that differ from what appears to be the norm or the normal due to the differing learned behaviors or what the society truly believes in objectivity and subjectivity. And having a personal perspective and mindset that differs from everyone around us. Saying that it's objectively wrong for people to have sexual preferences that differ from the norm is objectively wrong itself. I feel that we as a youth can come forward and help our fellow mates because, after all, for a dynamic India, we really need to bring about the changes that are needed for all around and really bring about that acceptance that everyone needs around us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anamitra, for giving such a wonderful insight regarding this topic. And the way you mentioned about the philosophy of nature, how accepting nature is, it reminded me of a wonderful philosophical insight by Osho. Osho, in one of his very famous speech, he talked about a reality which is not practiced in actuality. He talked about how vivid gender identity is. He talked about a very wonderful human nature. He said in his speech that when a human child is born, the child is born with multitudes of qualities and attributes. A child has the required grace, aggressiveness, every possible human nature. But with personality development, which is also a productive socialization and which is also a productive conditioning, the child slowly and steadily sheds off those qualities which are considered feminine or masculine according to the sexual orientation. So the society acts as a constraint, and the society, if you are a girl, then you will have to shed off the quality of aggressiveness. If you are a boy, you will have to shed off grace. So this is what the society does. The society tries to build up constraint on the attributes which are present in the human nature, and this is how the society creates a binariness. This is how the society tries to bring a constraint between the genders and to not accept the flows and course of nature. Thank you so much again, Anam Mitra. So here we are again moving forward with today's round of discussion. The second speaker for today is Kaushal Singh from Maharashtra. Thank you.
A very hearty good evening to one and all present here, and first of all, Jai Hind. Now, before I even begin my submission, a happy Pride to everyone. And my perspective on this particular issue would be slightly different from what would be presented by other people. I'll try to take the discussion more into the lines of policy. But before I begin that, one of my very strong personal beliefs, which I inculcated quite young, was that as human beings, you should not have problem with two people falling in love, irrespective of caste, gender, religion, creed, community. Anything cannot be a deterrent for two people falling in love. That's first. Now, second of all, when we look at the history of the Pride Month in India, uh, in the United States of America, we had the Stonewall riots, we had the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr. It got transformed into an inclusive movement for the LGBTQ A plus community. But in India, the battle started very quite after some time. In 1992, we had the first petition filed before the Delhi High Court for the decriminalization of Section 377. That point of time, it was filed by an organization which was AIDS Bhed Bhav Andolan Committee. That was which filed the case. And after that, cut to 2015, 16, and 17, long drawn battles of 2 decades, 2.5 decades, and post which we got the NAS Foundation judgment where Section 377 was decriminalized and the third gender was recognized. Now, that was the first step in the line. And that is, if we have to trace or if we have to get inclusivity for the LGBTQ plus community in India, it has to be a decadal growth movement. And we have to focus upon public policy and laying the groundwork for that. Activism, drawing attention to all such issues, that's creating pressure on government, that's absolutely fine. But the change has to come from within. And that is where governmental penetration needs to be done. We already have people from the LGBTQ plus community in the judiciary, but the other two wings, which is the executive and the legislature, where is the representation? So that is where allowing such representation helps. For that, reviewing the constitution, reviewing the current laws, and one of the biggest aspects, I'm a very big cheerleader when it comes to gender neutral laws. And gender neutral laws, when we talk about in this particular context, they also can be linked up to the issue of gender fluidity, because the world may see everything in black and white, but that's absolutely wrong, because today things exist in gray and sometimes many shades of gray. So that is where when you start laying the groundwork, and at a very next level, when we talk about education and awareness, we have the new education policy. Bring it in, inculcate the curriculum with gender fluidity, with respect to all forms of gender. Because when we were students back then, we did not have that sensitivity. We always saw it through a binary. And today's topic, if we look at the topic, whether it is a binary or a spectrum, if we look at the topic through a spectrum, is when we'll be doing justice to the topic. So public policy, sociology, the folkways, mores, and other than that, awareness creates a very, very strong vibe, a very positive vibe for the people to gel in itself. We have always, when we sit in legal communities, we hear this a lot, that third gender has been given quite some freedom under the incumbent government, under the by the Supreme Court, by the High Court. But if you look at the societies to crime ratios, that's very high in the third gender. That's because you did not economically include them, and that is something which has not been done since centuries. So people will talk about supporting such businesses which are run by the third gender, giving them economic giving them an economic spinal cord, so to speak, so that they can also progress economically. Because we, as of now, even don't have laws which allow the third gender to gather property, to buy property in India, which stands to be a legal right which everyone has. So these are some of the fault lines which are already there. The judgments, the activism, the so to speak, the um, bringing it out of the closet, that yes, we need to talk about this political topic, that's very great, but you need to lay it on with the groundwork itself. Because history has spoken this as a fact, that India as a civilization, it's absolutely dynamic. We are constantly changing and evolving, and as a civilization, I feel India was one of those first countries which had even the slightest hint of LGBTQ plus in its mythology as well. When you look at the 10th roop of Lord Vishnu, which is the Ardhanarishwar roop, which has qualities of both a man and a woman, that is the most perfect example of how strong the LGBTQ plus community is, not just biologically, but biologically and physiologically, but also psychologically and sociologically. So economic groundwork, along with public policy, along with inclusivity in politics and executive, is what makes the changes. And that change is coming. Many people who are very anti to the change. They are like, oh, where is the change? Why do we need the change? But it's just that, yes, it is a tectonic shift, and when that tectonic shift comes into place, many people are not going to like it. There will be some people who will be very pro the changes, but you have to give it a shot. You have to give it a chance, because if we talk about India becoming the world leader in the next 20 to 30 40 years, it all starts with such kind of dynamism and such kind of inclusivity. For Eurocentric cultures, Eurocentric civilizations, United States of America, it took almost 2 centuries, 200 years to give civil rights to such people. We don't have that much time. And India is not known to, languish when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to giving human rights and representation to the people whose voices have not been heard for so long. So bringing that change from within ourselves, I think creating and another idea which very well I've heard of is that creating gender neutral spaces in schools and colleges, along with supporting self-help groups. We have very few self-help groups run by the LGBTQ plus community, but go out, support them, at least hear their side of the story, that what they have to say, because that will also, the interaction which you have with them, that will also create certain amount of changes in your mind. And I think with that you will be able to take India to a next level. You'll be able to take the society and the civilization to a next level with the LGBTQ plus community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kaushal, for your wonderful insights and giving us a legal perspective and also a practical oriented approach. Uh, at the end, you mentioned about self-help groups. At the end, you mentioned about supporting these people out. There is also a very interesting term to it that is, which I just reminded, that was ally sheeping. Ally sheeping is something when people from the heterosexual community, they are supporting these people from the homosexual community by not identifying with them all the time, but by standing by them or by standing behind them. This is something which is the need of the hour. This is something which requires more and more participation, because if people from all around the society will come up and participate with these people, then only people from the LGBTQIA plus community will get their existential rights. Thank you so much again. Now we are going to move forward with today's discussion. The next speaker for today is Dristi Jain Patni from Delhi.
Hello, everybody. Very warm greetings, ladies, gentlemen, and the non-binary. My name is Dristi Jain Patni, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm currently studying in the University of Delhi, and I'm so happy to be a part of this discussion. So, when I first heard the topic, there was a part in me which is so happy that yes, we are finally having open discussions about topics which are so pertinent to the 21st century societal issues. But then there was again a part of me which became sad and which was feeling low, because yes, we live in the 21st century. It's the year 2022, and there's so much stigma around the transgender community. There's so much stigma and prejudice around the LGBTQI community, and there's people still look down at them and people still mock them, and there's a lot that needs to be addressed, and I don't think that if we can even do it in the 1 hour session. But yes, moving forward, so firstly, let's imagine a prism, and let's imagine a white ray of light. So what happens when a white ray of light passes through a prism, right? It disperses into the 7 colors of Vibgyor, correct? So now, when nature has taught us that nothing is white, nothing is black, and for me, nothing is even gray, everything is colorful, then who are we to look at it from a black and white perspective? Now, let's talk about something that we were all taught in schools, right? So we had 2 assembly lines, correct? Boys, girls. We had 2 toilets, boys, girls. We uh, we had we had we did not have a lot of inclusivity when we were in our schools, and uh,
Dristi, are you there?
yeah, I'm so sorry, there was a power cut. Yeah, so as I was
Superb.
saying that there's not been a lot of inclusivity. When we were in our schools, we had like two toilets, boys and girls, two different lines in the assembly, boys and girls, two types of genders, boys and girls, correct? But in we when we were in our schools, we are still very young, and we were never open about the third community or the third gender, and we were never open about people having different sexual orientations. And as a matter of fact, something as basic as that was not taught to us and was not even mentioned in our schools. Now, what makes it very sad for me is that I never acknowledged in my school was a certain incident that happened to my friend. So we were all in class 5 or 6, I suppose, and you know how it is, right? I mean, everybody has those hormones, and it's butterflies flying out. And there was this friend of mine, and he confessed to our teacher in front of the entire class that he might not be attracted to girls, but he's attracted to guys. And my teacher just dismissed his entire statement, saying that, oh no, it's just a phase, boys are supposed to like girls, girls are supposed to like boys, there's nothing in between. And this happened, and my friend was quite sad. But what happened next is what is actually shocking. Now, because my friend came out in front of the entire class and he thought that his classroom was a safe space and we are all his friends, later on he started getting bullied by his same classmates, and he was molested, and he was called all those bad words which I don't want to even say. And it went to such an extent that he had to leave the school. Now, this was my first encounter, and I was very young, and I hope I had known what was happening so that I could take a stand for him. But I take this as a positive incident because it shaped my mind in a very correct way. Now, back again, when we were in class 12th, I was in 11th, and I had the senior in class 12th, and he was the most amazing guy I have met in my entire school life. He used to dance, and he used to make fun of people, and he was so jolly in nature, okay? And he was openly gay, and he was proud of it, and everybody should be proud of their sexualities. It's nobody's concern whom you like or whom you don't like. And this very guy, the senior of mine, he was bullied by students who talked policy and who talked public relations and who talked international relations and what not. And these were the highly intellectual pro kids of my school who used to bully him, and it used to burn my boil my blood, because at one hand you're talking about the constitution and you're talking about the right of equality, but on the very same hand you're bullying someone, and you're not allowing that person to be who he is. And that's something which is very wrong. It's wrong on every aspect. We talk about the right of equality, and we preach the right of equality, and we use it in every argument. But do we ever realize that the people from the LGBTQI community and the third gender, the transgenders especially, are not getting the equal rights, and they do not enjoy the equal status in the society as we do? I think we all have faced we in our day-to-day conversation. Sometimes we refer to the transgender community in a very derogatory tone, like we use words like chakka, chamya, and I do not want to go on, but we all know the list goes and go on and on and on, correct? Now, what I feel is, you call them with a respectful way, in a respectful tone. Why do people look down upon the third gender is beyond my understanding. Now, nature has created us all, and we are all born from the same, let's say, fiber. We are all cut from the same piece of cloth. Um, but but what gives us the right to look down upon someone else just because they are not what the society conceives as normal, and they do not fit into the societal structure? And this societal structure is wrong on so many aspects, and is so problematic on so many aspects, that we can have discussions on and on and on, and we still could not stop talking about how problematic things are in our society right now. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, and the people from the non-binary, a very happy pride to all of you. I know that a lot of us are very enthusiastic about going to the pride marches and, screaming love is love and putting rainbows on our story. And yes, that is important. Let me tell you, that is important. That is our way of showing affection and support. But please, before saying love is love, do understand that we are celebrating this Pride Month to acknowledge the struggles, to acknowledge the hardships that these people, especially the transgenders, have gone through centuries, and they're still going through the same amount of hardships. Why? Because even in the 21st century, we failed to give them the equal rights and opportunities, and we look at them from a binary perspective. It's either 0 or 1 for us. And when I go more about the Pride Month, we see brands turning their logos into rainbows and brands supporting transgender communities, and they are holding organized Pride marches and whatnot. But I think that what's important is you don't celebrate Pride Month for just the month of June. Don't do it. Don't do it if the day 30th June comes and the day the next month starts, you forget that why we were doing and why we were celebrating Pride Month. If you forget that why we were acknowledging and fighting for the rights of the LGBTQI plus people, if you're really so keen about supporting them and being an ally, as Mayuraksha said, try to educate yourselves, try to know what the full form of the LGBTQIA plus is, try to educate yourselves about the riots and the different legal aspects, as Kaushal talked about, different legal aspects of um, this entire LGBTQI thing, and try to teach yourself and try to educate those around you. If you really have to support them and if you really want to be an ally, stop making fun of gay couples or stop making fun of lesbian couples. If you do not have anything supporting to say to any individual, don't speak. Keep your mouth shut. That's one part of it. And recently I think a lot of people saw that we had a very grand Pride march here at DU's North Campus, and a lot of people joined. But at the very moment, there was a section of people criticizing the queer community. So this is the youth I'm talking about. These are the students at Delhi University, the highest ranked institution, everybody's dream, the Delhi University. And yes, this is how we need to change the mindset. Changing the mindset is very important, because even if you implement thousands of laws on people, people are not going to change themselves and people are not going to start supporting them until and unless it comes out of their own heart. That's all I had to say. I do hope that after this discussion and everybody who's listening, please try to acknowledge the existence of the third gender. Please try to be as supportive as you can be, and please try to support their ventures and support them economically. That's all from my side. Thank you. Happy Pride, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dristi, for your well articulated talk. Thank you for sharing such personal insight, and thank you for also talking about how awareness and knowledge is important, much more than just, being a side of the community. We should know first what actually LGBTQIA plus means. This is the need of the hour. This is something which should be known first, then done first. So moving forward, we have the last speaker for today, Swagat Nath from Assam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayuraksha. Good evening, everyone. I'm Swagat Nath from Guwahati. I'm doing my graduation from the Assam Royal Global University. Today, here I am with all my panelists to talk about the topic. It's never a binary, it's always a spectrum. So before directly diving in the mean body, as Mayuraksha already told, what is sex and what is gender, let's again recall. Sex is basically biological, which is assigned by birth, and gender, which is socially constructed, and how and oneself wants to be known or wants to be recognized themselves. So, according to our society, there is only one sexuality, which is heterosexuality, is accepted religiously as well as socially. Because the reason is because the opposite gender, the intercourse of opposite gender gives birth to a child. Just because of this reproduction process, they considered heterosexual as natural and other sexualities to be unnatural. Just because of this reason. if we if we say that social acceptance plays a vital role for the people like me, I'm part of this LGBTQIA plus community. So it plays a vital role. This social acceptance plays a vital role for us. Like being being from a patriarchal society and the only son of my family, it's too hard to tell myself who I am and to express who I am. It's quite hard to for my parents also to accept me how I am. So this is quite becomes a barrier for me to express myself. If I talk about myself, I am I'm I'm different. I was very different from other male childs around me from my very small age. I never liked outdoor games. I always liked staying in home. I always liked playing indoor games like cooking. I used to practice dropping sari. I used to copy my mom and my aunts how they drop sari. I used to dance in front of mirror. I just love being with myself. I used to play with toys, dolls, soft toys. I never liked like outdoor games. So this dancing, dropping sari and dancing in front of mirror, this thing struck my parents that maybe my son is interested in dance, so they put admit me in a dance school. There from here this twist come. So then I started dancing when I was in class 1 or 2. From my school, I have to select one of the co-curricular activity. So I selected again dance in my school as well. So in that point of time, my classmates started asking me why I am dancing. तुम लड़का बन के क्यों लड़की जैसे नाचते हो? तुम लड़का हो, तुम हम लोग जैसे क्रिकेट खेलो, बास्केटबॉल खेलो, या तो गिटार सीखो, तुम्हें क्यों डांस सीखना है? What's the use of it? Then this criticism goes more takes a bigger shape when I was in class 7 or 8. They started teasing me like छक्का छमिया छक्का जैसे नाचते हो तुम छमिया जैसे नाचते हो इन फ्यूचर तुम तो हिजरी जैसे नाच नाच के पैसा लोगे. I have to face all this kind of things, but I always ignored. I never put my what can I say? I never entertained those things. My parents helped me like don't take care of what they are saying. Just be who you are. Take care of your own talent. You are good in dance, do it. Continue. Don't stop your talent. Don't stop yourself to be who you are. Slowly, when I grew up, I was in secondary when I was in 10 and 9. This teasing takes a much more bigger shape, and I was being sexually abused, molested, and that took me into a trauma which I can't express to anyone. Many of the people of my community has faced this. They have to digest because they can't share these things to anyone. It's very private. Parents won't understand what I'm going. They will blame us only. Just it's something wrong. You have done something wrong. They will blame us. So somewhere it was hidden. So I never spoke it to anyone. But I was suffering inside. I was questioning myself. I am wrong or the society is wrong? What is happening with me? So when I completed my class 10 boards, in a new school, I entered a new school. I met a very close friend there who was already came out lesbian. She took care of me. She tried to figure out what was going within me. So she took me to a LGBTQIA plus community, NGO, where they fight for our rights and they take help, they take counseling and whatever. they work for LGBTQIA plus community people. So there I start meeting many people around me, and it was so nice to feel that yeah, there are many people like me. I started feeling that's my a family. That is my family. It's a part. I'm part of that. So that in that way, I started slowly discovering, and I started recovering from my trauma. I started discovering myself, who I am, and I started expressing myself through dance. So now I am a good, I'm trained Odissi dancer, and I feel I will be pursuing my career in dance only. So yeah, it's all about me. And in the end, happy Pride Month. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Swagat, for sharing your heart wrenching story. We all feel that this round of discussion would have been futile without your presence, without your personal insight, without your personal story. And it's very disheartening also at times that educated people from your school, they kind of told such things to you. But in reality, it is often said that knowledge is power. But this power can only be a power if we utilize that power. So I believe that in long run, this will change. In long run, people like Swagat would be able to have a wonderful future and will be able to bring out their best of potential with flying colors. Thank you again for sharing your insights, and thank you again for sharing your heart out with all of us. Now we are beginning with the second round of our discussion, opening the floor to the speakers for the second round.
Right. Thank you so much, Mayuraksha. And before I begin my second round of submissions, I have something to tell to Swagat. That Swagat, you said in your opening submission that since the very start, I was different. Uh, you need to change that and say, since the very start, it was not you who was different. Since the very start, it was society which was indifferent, and there's a difference in that. So it was not you who was different; it was the society which was indifferent. Now, and thank you so much for sharing that journey. Now, for the second round, Mayuraksha, a lot has been said about hormone therapy, gender change therapy, and how that can be affected, and uh, the ethics of it, the legality of it, the jurisprudential crisis which exists behind it. Now, this is something which is not indigenous to India, which is not homegrown India. This is something again which was imported to India from the Eurocentric cultures. When in the late 90s and the early 2000s, when this thing picked up, that what should be the locus standi, the status quo of hormonal treatment or gender change, and is that legal, or should we allow people to undergo that? um, Now, my aspect on this particular issue is again very technical. When you look at gender change, or when you look at hormonal treatment for gender change, that is something which still needs a lot of perfection if we look at the medical sciences. And if something is not perfected by the medical sciences, that means the failure rate of the same is high. Now, for an LGBTQI plus person who's already facing the social stigma, has come around and wants to get the gender change therapy done, you're already fighting that social stigma, and now you also have to fight the physiological pain or the physiological stigma. So till the time you don't perfect it, don't go about suggesting that to anyone and everyone. That's first. Second of all, till the time you don't have stakeholders from the committee, from the community coming out and telling it out in the open as to what is their stand or what is their perspective. Because if my limited knowledge goes, there is a clear divide in the LGBTQ plus community, that what is the ethics behind gender change or hormonal treatment. Because many a times we see there is forceful application of the same, and you can't determine as to how what levels of pain a person has to go if there is forceful application of the same. And if we are giving respect, or if we are giving identity to the LGBTQ plus community, the second thought, counter thought to that, is that why do you have to change something which is already there, right? So now these are two aspects on which there stands to be a big question mark. So this is something which we need to debate about, discuss about. But till the time, clearly from a medical standpoint, because we have seen a lot of high load of medical legal cases being filed with gender therapies and hormonal treatments having gone wrong, and that too, the most of the cases having gone wrong, the age group stands to be somewhere around 17 to 24. That is our age group. Now, if something goes wrong in our age group, that stands to be a lifelong struggle or a lifelong problem. So till the time you don't perfect the medical sciences, I think we can go ahead with the jurisprudential debate, the ethics of it. But then again, till the time you don't receive medical perfection, I feel there needs to be some amount of control or state established control in the same.
I think I'll take caution's point forward about gender therapies. Now, I am not someone who understands the societal pain or the physiological pain that anyone has to go up through, and I am not someone to comment upon it either. I don't think I have the correct authority to do so. But there's one thing that I feel that we can incorporate within ourselves to be more sensitive socially towards these people who are undergoing through gender therapies and who are undergoing through these medical changes. And that is, again, as I said, and I stand by my point, is of educating ourselves. Now, we all had those chapters of sexual reproduction and that basic fine line of sex education that we received during our class 8th and 10th, I suppose. And I remember our teachers being so shy and, doing, they used to just finish that chapter in such a hurry as if, oh my god, what kind of a bomb and nuclear science are you teaching the kids? Now, what I wonder is if during at that time when I was in my 10th, 11th, or 12th, had my school authorities or had the community around me inside my school been more vocal about the plights of the LGBTQIA community and educating ourselves among ourselves in peer groups about, yes, there is a section of the society that deserves equal representation as well. Our society would have taken a different shape, and might be some people from the youth who are still very neglecting towards these communities and these people. They might have had a different mindset, and altogether we might have had a very different societal structure. Now, when I talk about talking and representation, let's go to our favorite pastime ever, that is Bollywood movies. Okay, and this is recently when Bollywood has started giving equal representation to the LGBTQI community. But then again, as it is Bollywood, certain things go very wrong. Now, what I find very stupid is that they do not do their proper researches. They just try to normalize the stigma that is around the entire community, and sometimes they try to passively, they try to take it into a heteronormative way about the entire, like they take a very heteronormative perspective on a homosexual story. Now, I believe is that if you have to lessen the pain and the judgment that the LGBTQI community, especially the third gender, receives from the people, um, try to influence the people in the correct way, try to educate the people through mass media, and try to make people understand the importance of accepting these people. And acceptance is where their life gets easier, and a lot easier. Like, as Swagat's story said, he was not being accepted in his schools, and people used to bully him and mock him. And just imagine how easy, I'm so sorry, Swagat, if I'm stepping on a personal line here, but how easy his life would have been if he had been accepted for who he is, and if the society had not been that indifferent. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that I cannot go over the medical procedures and the medical nitty-gritties, and I cannot try to make people understand the pain that transgender might go during these sex therapies and during these gender change processes. But what I can try to convey to the society is that we need to be more accepting, so that even if a transgender person is undergoing something, at least we as a society and we as a community are there for them, and they feel like, yes, they are being accepted in the society. That's all from my side. I do hope that I was making sense, and thank you so much.
So I want to continue what Dristi was talking about sex education, importance of sex education. Literally, it's very important in this point of time. Sex education literally important, basically based on homosexual. We always got the knowledge that uh, protection is only used for to for the childbirth, right? For the like, because for non-pregnancy, protection is always used. But there are many things where protection is always needed. There are many diseases like HIVs, STDs, there are various kind of STDs, just happens because of sexual intercourse, where people like us were never, made us known that this kind of protections are always also needed for preventing diseases, not just child. It's also important to prevent diseases. This education is literally important. Even in this, if you want, if you there is a study that recent days the LGBTQIA plus community is suffering from HIV. Most of them are HIV positive because of this lack of sex education. This is very important for our society. And as sorry, it was disconnected. So as Kaushal was talking about that the transformation of a man to woman, just the surgical process for a transgender. It's so shameful that people from our own community, they criticize trans people just because you are God gifted. Why do you need to change? Why do you want to change your natural body? They don't understand that a person can't feel themselves their within his or her body. They find it as a cage. They starve in that own body. They want to be free. They want to be who they want, who they want. So these points are very important for our society to accept transgender as well as other other sexualities of our community. So I think this much I want to forward this to Anamitra.
Thank you so much, Swagat. And I absolutely agree that sex education is very important, and specifically talking about in starting from a school age, because I think school is a building ground where a student and an individual in itself grows and starts learning. And thereby, when we talk about making a person or making an identity of a person starts from the very first thing, which is school. And so building about inclusivity in school is the key point that I think we should take into point, because youth is the next upcoming generation that is going to bring about the needed change in the society. And so catering to that youth, bringing about the ideas of inclusivity, normality, and reducing that norms wala, that idea of binary norms, and more of that changing from those binary norms to spectrum related norms, or not normaling the idea of spectrum, is the first thing that we should do. And a very important point that Swagat has said is talking about the major aspects of biological aspects that involve sexual, sex education. The second point that I would like to mention from the speech of Kaushal Bhaiya, because he beautifully mentioned that, how Eurocentric countries and the USA in itself took 2 centuries to get about that idea of normating that idea of the LGBTQI community. And since we as a country, India, want to become a more dynamic country, want to make India as the entrepreneurial hub of the country, and bringing about these needed change, I think policy making, like Kaushal Bhaiya said, is very important. Adding on the idea of having LGBTQI community in the political institutions, political system is the first thing, because that is how you will bring out you bring out the voice of the unheard spectrum voices. And I think bringing that unheard spectrum voices is the first step we should bring about in bringing about inclusive systems and policies in our nation. The third thing that I would mention is, like I said, that India wants to be an entrepreneurial hub. And so inclusivity in that also plays a very important role, wherein inclusivity of helping the startups buy transgender, all the people of LGBTQI community is very important. And I think one thing that we can take inspiration from is what New Zealand is doing. New Zealand itself is a hub wherein they have brought about equality and inclusion in their economical system, their social systems, their policies that are around neutral rooms, neutral gender neutral spaces, and also political system that is very neutral in terms of their gender identity. And so I think bringing about these first steps are the key area how we can truly bring about the difference. And then making a very important point is that youth, like I said, is the next generation that will bring about the needed change. And so I think catering to that youth and making them aware about all of this is one thing that we should surely make in mind. And giving this baton in the hand of the youth will bring about the needed change for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for giving such wonderful insights to the topic. And thank you, Anamitra, as you mentioned about youth being the pallbearers and youth being the limelight of this century. And we, the youth, have this in our hand of creating this awareness and bringing about a change in the entire landscape and bringing gender neutral and norms and gender as an identity that is, you know, full of colors and not only a binary entity. So before ending the discussion, I would like to recapitulate from my fellow participants' talk, and I would like to include a few very important note to it, that there is a intrinsic uh, intrinsic nature of how the LGBTQIA community, they take a course through which they can mitigate this problem when it comes to a difference between the perceived gender and the actual gender. Now, what is a perceived gender? Perceived gender is what society perceives a person's gender to be. And what is an actual gender? Actual gender is what an individual perceives his or her gender to be. Now, when there is a difference between these two, people from the LGBTQIA plus community, they take a course of action. The first step is social transition, wherein they use several binders. They use gender neutral clothings as a means to propagate that they are from the LGBTQIA community. They also use pronouns. Now, pronouns is something which should be used by everybody from all across the society because it acts as a marker. Then the second step used by these people is the gender therapies or the puberty blockers, which falls in the soft medical transition. And the third step, which Kaushal very well mentioned about, and also about the legalities, that is the third step, that is hard medical transition. Now, hard medical transition is something which acts as a barriers at times also because it can be done only after the age of 17 to 18 years with rules and regulation differing across the countries. But this three steps that is followed by the LGBTQIA community is something which is often seen to get constrained from the society. Because the first thing that these people need or requires is affirmation. Affirmation from the significant others, affirmation from the society at large. Without affirmation, without support from the society, this entire three steps ceases to exist or seems futile. So the first and the foremost step that we, as the people of this society, requires to do is we need to accept people from all across the gender spectrum. We also need to accept these people regarding their choices, and we also need to make others aware and understand them. And there is one more thing that is required is empathy. We need to show them empathy, and we need to share this empathy with everyone. So we are almost in the last leg of today's discussion, but this discussion would remain futile if we do not, if this discussion doesn't knock the door of every house and every roundtable session at home with a coffee in our hand. So this discussion should be bringing about a change. This discussion should continue and become a roadmap in the society at large. Now, when we are in the end of today's discussion, I also would like to mention that knowledge is one of the most beautiful weapons. And this is what we, the present generation, have with us. This weapon is with us. And this weapon can only be utilized if we share our awareness, we share our understanding of the community with the people across the generation. Because the intrinsic problem in India is that, people still do not know the difference between gender and sex. If you go around and do a questionnaire survey in India, you will see that, people always gives a overlapping answer that gender is equals to sex, sex is equals to gender. But in reality, these two terms are very, very different. And this is what, we need to propagate. This is the thing that we need to make people aware about, that these two terms are different. And awareness would be the first step of change. Keeping this in mind, and, we are really glad that Pinkish Foundation gave us this wonderful platform and opportunity to speak out our heart about this topic, to speak about such an important issue that the contemporary society is facing. I would like to thank Pinkish Foundation for such an opportunity. I would like to thank Arun Gupta sir and Shalini Gupta ma'am. I would also like to thank Ruchi ma'am and Ananita ma'am for their constant support throughout this discussion. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.